Today, I wanted to share a podcast that I think you are going to love. It's called American Songcatcher. It's an educational documentary-style podcast that preserves and connects the cultural heritage of American roots music through stories and song. It's hosted by folk musician and musicologist Nicholas Edward Williams. American Songcatcher weaves stories across the spectrum of traditional music to artists who shaped and played integral roles in different forms of blues, country, jazz, bluegrass, western, gospel, old time, and the folk music that is derived from it all. On this episode of American Songcatcher, you will hear the story behind the king of western swing, Bob Wills. One of the most influential and iconic band leaders and musicians of the 1930s to 1950s, Bob came from a humble life of a poor sharecropping family. He was deeply influenced by old-time and breakdown fiddle through his Texas state champion family of fiddlers in his father and his uncle. Bob also loved all the turn-of-the-century 1920s black music, and this confluence of cultures would help him create that craze that became Western swing. The details of his journey to get there will surprise you. Before we get into the episode, host Nicholas Edward Williams has a special message about restring Appalachia.
Thank you, Ismay. Do you have a quality instrument laying around the house, not being used? Does someone you know have more instruments than they need? Consider supporting Restring Appalachia. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that gives free, quality instruments back to people that lose them from natural disasters, and we're an instrument resource for music education organizations. To get involved, head to restringappalachia.org. And now, here's American Songcatcher, featuring the story of the king of Western swing, Bob Wills. You're listening to American Songcatcher, tracing the roots of American music from its cultured past to today's artists playing it forward. I'm folk musician Nicholas Edward Williams.
Never have one girl at a time. We always have 7, 8, or 9. But now they're gone. We don't worry. We're sitting on top of the world.
Born the first of 10 children to poor sharecropping farmers, James Robert Wills, better known as Bob Wills, came into the world on March 6, 1905, in Cosey, Texas. From the get-go, Wills grew up under influences that would be evident his entire life. First, his music always reflected the Western world that he grew up in. There's dust and dance halls in every bar of his music. Second, the fiddle was key to his sound. Aside from the human voice, the Texas fiddle was the first sound that Bob ever heard. Both grandfathers and several uncles played the fiddle, and his father, John, was a Texas state champion, known for his breakdown style, connected to Scottish reels and English square dancing, which got people moving.
Now, friends, we're going to play you an old breakdown, the kind that you can just roll up the rug, move back the chairs, and turn on. You know, one of the old deep in the heart of Texas tunes. Here it is. Let's go, boys, a breakdown.
The fiddle was especially popular on the frontier because it was easy to carry on horseback. In 1913, his family migrated to West Texas after years of hard conditions in Limestone County. Along the way, they stopped at cotton camps, where Bob would work alongside black children who knew labor songs. In the evenings, they all played music with a mixture of guitars, mandolins, fiddles, and trumpets to entertain themselves, and Bob learned their songs.
Lord, Lord, Lord. Yeah.
He knew early on that he wanted to be a musician. In regional fiddle championships, the finalists were often Bob, his father, and his father's rival, Eck Robertson. one of the first old-time musicians to be recorded. To help make ends meet, the family would play for dances and make tips all across East and West Texas. His Uncle John played country fiddle, and around 8 years old, Bob had learned to play backing rhythm. And when he played the fiddle, Bob was forced to use all of the bow, not just the upper end, as most breakdown fiddlers do, and he developed a long bow technique because he was so small. One night in 1915, near Turkey, Texas, the family was scheduled to play a dance. Bob got there ahead of his uncle and everybody else, and a huge rainstorm came and flooded the creek, preventing the rest of the family from crossing. The crowd at the ranch house was wondering if and how they were going to have a dance. Bob said, "I know 6 tunes," and at 10 years old, he played those 6 tunes over and over again, all night long.
An old banjo, a harp guitar, and fiddle and bow. When they play rural rhythm, see them sway rural rhythm. It's okay, rural rhythm. How I love to go to the country dances. I know.
Western swing can be traced back to a wide array of sounds, from 19th century European immigrants who brought folk and polka music, to Mexican mariachi, Cajun zydeco, and most significantly, African American forms of music that rose across the South, from Texas to Mississippi to Georgia. Notable black musicians who have had a hand in influencing its sound are turn-of-the-century ragtime by East Texas composer and pianist Scott Joplin, the father of Memphis blues, W.C. Handy, the New Orleans jazz of Louis Armstrong, even the soulful vocals of the Empress of the Blues, Bessie Smith.
Tired of being lonely, tired of being blue.
In his late teens, Bob actually traveled 35 miles on horseback from the rivers near Turkey, Texas, to Childress, Texas, to watch Bessie Smith perform in person, often stated as one of his favorite singers. Bob later said, "I believe Bessie was about the best I've ever heard or seen." Soon after, at age 21, Bob got married to Edna Posey and spent his days as a farmhand, though he quickly found out that it was ruining his hands, and therefore interrupting his ability to play fiddle. Despite being widely considered as a top fiddler in West Texas, by 1929, Bob still wasn't sure how he could make a living playing music. He spent years working as a barber, trying his hand as an insurance salesman, and fiddling at dances. One day in 1930, Bob was arrested in Turkey, Texas, for public intoxication and was humiliated. He vowed never to return and moved his growing family to Fort Worth that same year and took a job with a medicine show in blackface as a comedian and fiddle player. In 1930, a guitar-playing friend from minstrel shows named Herman Arnspiger started teaming up with Bob at house dances, as did jazz and blues singer and cigar salesman Milton Brown, who brought his brother and guitar player Durwood Brown. It was the Great Depression, and many people were at home listening to the radio for comfort. In due course, they became the Aladdin Lamp Company's Aladdin Laddies on WBAP, Fort Worth. Later that same year, the group was hired to promote Burris Mills' Light Crust Flour on WBAP, and the band was renamed to the Light Crust Doughboys and given their own show, which became very popular. Wills was getting paid $15 a week, around $500 in today's money, which was enough to keep Bob from working other jobs.
I'm a ding-dong daddy from Dumas, babe. You ought to see me do my style. Wild papa from Polecat Holler. I don't want to get rough. I got a girl, little and low. Used to go
to see her, but I don't no more. Ding dong daddy from Bluegrass Bay, you ought to see me do my stuff.
The band was constantly evolving as they tried out new sounds, different instruments, and musical styles. It was the jazz age. The Dixieland influence, evident early on in the use of the banjo, was evolving into the uninhibited swing found in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles clubs. Bob began to incorporate the swinging rhythms that he heard on the radio from New Orleans jazz and blues into the old-time fiddle music that he grew up with.
Oh, it's all your fault if I ain't sleeping, live on dreams instead of eating. I'm just a wreck, and it's all your fault.
Well, I said in the beginning, all my fault.
And it's all your
The combination was unique, powerful, and it was a sensation. Their popularity grew, and W. Lee O'Daniel, the manager of the mill that was sponsoring them, saw an opportunity and began to host the radio show and write songs for them. He donned the name Pappy O'Daniel and would ride Bob's success on radio to eventually become governor of Texas, as well as the direct inspiration for the overbearing character of the same name, played by actor Charles Durning in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I got an idea.
What's that, Junior?
We could hire us a little fella even smaller than Stokes's.
You?
Slump shoulders, sack of guts. Why, we look like a bunch of Johnny-come-latelys, bragging on our own magic. Don't matter how stumpy.
Pappy O'Daniel didn't allow the Light Crust Doughboys to play ranch dances while they were under contract, which was a huge part of their income. Milton Brown had it, and by the fall of 1932, he and his brother left the band to form their own influential outfit, Milton Brown and his musical Brownies.
All 4, 5 times. All 4, 5 times. Baby 4, 5 times. Baby 4, 5 times. Man made you right. Doing things right. 4, 5 times. All 4, 5 times.
When Milton Brown left, Bob was seeking another singer to replace him, someone that could match his versatility to sing blues, jazz, country, and cowboy songs. He auditioned to 67 singers before he brought in pianist and vocalist Tommy Duncan, who had been singing for tips at a root beer stand. Tommy would eventually become one of the most important singers in Western swing.
I'm walking in the shadow of the blue because I can't get along with you.
Pappy O'Daniel promoted the Light Crust Doughboys until they became the most popular radio program in the Southwest. Bob admired Pappy O'Daniel's ability to promote, but everything else rubbed him the wrong way. It was bad enough that Pappy looked down on them playing dances, but he also despised drinking, and Bob was a drinker. He'd already missed a few radio shows, but when Bob wrecked a promotional flour mill truck, Pappy O'Daniel had it and fired him from the Doughboys.
Watching the bubbles in my beer. But come in, Tom, and give us the lowdown on it.
Tonight in a bar alone I'm sitting,
Yes?
apart from the laughter and the cheers.
That's not good.
Tommy and Kermit Whalen, who was now playing pedal steel guitar and bass, decided to follow Bob to Waco rather than stay with Pappy O'Daniel and the Doughboys. They got a gig on Waco radio, billing themselves as formerly the Light Crust Doughboys. Though they weren't paid, they could advertise their ranch dances. A local businessman named O.W. Mayo started booking shows for them, and within a few months in Waco, they were making more in one night than they did in 1 week with the Doughboys. They began calling themselves the Playboys and performed around Waco for 3 months before heading to Oklahoma City in early 1934.
The W. Lee O'Daniel Flour Company of Fort Worth, Texas is proud to present its president, Pat O'Daniel, and his Hillbilly Boys.
Pappy O'Daniel had organized his flour company to make, quote, hillbilly flour, and began to call his new band the Hillbilly Boys. The slogan, "Pass the Biscuits, Pappy," made O'Daniel a household name throughout Texas, which led him to eventually becoming two-time governor and a U.S. senator. O'Daniel realized that nobody could sell his flour products better than Bob Wills had, so he did everything that he could to deter Bob and get him back to Fort Worth. When he found out that Bob was advertising his new band as formerly the Light Crust Doughboys, he filed a lawsuit. In Oklahoma City at WKY Radio, O'Daniel promised that he would buy airtime if they would cancel Bob Wills' show, and the radio station did just that. So Bob and the other musicians went to Tulsa, where they heard about an opportunity to record for KVOO Radio.
Oh, let's do it.
KVOO was a 25,000-watt radio station that served a huge audience all over Tulsa and a surrounding area of about 50 miles. At midnight on February 9th, 1934, they played for a 1-hour trial broadcast and were soon given their own daily show. Pappy O'Daniel tried to sway KVOO with buying airtime again to cancel the broadcasts, but they declined, and KVOO in Tulsa became the voice of Texas swing, as it was beginning to be called. Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys was their new name, and they continued adding musicians who played by ear, not just sight reading, including rhythm guitarist and Kermit's brother, June Whalen, tenor banjoist, fiddler, and Bob's brother, Johnny Lee Wills. He added Everett Stover on trumpet, Bob's cousin and upright bassist, Son Lansford, Zeb McNally on saxophone, Al Strickland on piano, the first drummer in country music, Smokey Dacus, and steel guitar Hall of Famer, Leon McAuliffe.
Now listen, everybody from near and far, if you want to know who we are, we're the Texas Playboys from the Lone Star State. If you like the way we play, listen while we try to say, we're the Texas Playboys from the Lone Star State.
In 1935, O.W. Mayo started booking at Tulsa's Kane's Ballroom, and it became headquarters for broadcasting the Texas Playboys' noonday show, Monday through Saturday, as well as their Thursday and Saturday night dances. Ever the showman, dapper and dashing in his Stetson hat and yoke shirt, Bob Wills developed a show that brought 1,500 people to Kane's 2 nights a week, and hundreds to the venues that they played 4 nights a week on the road.
From Kane's 423 North Main in Tulsa, Oklahoma, KVOO presents Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys featuring Johnny Lee Wills.
When Bob Wills' former bandmate, Milton Brown, who is considered the father of Western swing, was tragically killed in a car accident in April of 1936, the die was cast. Though Milton Brown and his musical Brownies was more popular than Bob and his Texas Playboys at the time of his death, Milton's contributions to the establishment of Western swing have been overshadowed. His undeniable innovations have inspired countless groups all over the state of Texas and beyond, who all modeled their sound after the musical Brownies, such as Bill Boyd, Roy Newman, Jimmy Rivard, Adolph Hoffner, Cliff Bruner, Leon Chapelier, and others. In a 1960s interview, Bob Wills said, "Milton Brown and myself started this thing." Every time that Bob was delighted with Tommy Duncan's singing, or a lick on the pedal steel guitar by Leon McAuliffe, Wills would let out a falsetto holler, which he got from the black musicians in the cotton camps of Texas when he was a boy. In their first recording sessions with Brunswick, the producer was confused by it and asked Bob to stop talking during the recording. In so many words, Bob replied, "You asked for Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys, and that's what you're going to get. If I feel like hollering, I'm gonna." That was the end of that discussion, and that holler became his trademark, so much so that people would get upset if he didn't holler many times during a live performance. Bob's dancing and fiddling was the guide for the band's sound, which had as many as 5 fiddlers at a time, and borrowing from the big bands so popular at that time, included horn sections and added a full harmonizing rhythm guitar section. In the late 1930s, Bob Wills and O.W. Mayo took over the lease of Kane's Ballroom, and Mayo bought it outright in the years following. By 1940, the Texas Playboys recordings had outsold all of the nearly 200 artists that had recorded for Brunswick, and the band had grown to be as talented and versatile as any swing band in the country, and had a repertoire of 3,600 songs.
Rhythm here, rhythm there, rhythm floating everywhere. Get with it, all get with it. Red hot rhythm now. Sister's gone, daddy too. Mama's in the kitchen singing poo-poo-be-doo. Get with it, all get with it. Red hot rhythm now. It makes you shout, it makes you sing, it makes you want to go do things.
While this podcast is free for you, we rely on your support as listeners to keep this show going. If you've learned something new, were entertained, or felt moved by this program, please consider making a small donation or contribute monthly with our Patreon community. Simply put, without funding, there is no show. To support, please visit the links in the show notes. And for those of you who prefer a tax-exempt donation option, American Songcatcher has partnered with the 501c3 nonprofit Music in Common. You can find that link to donate in the show notes. Now, back to the show. Back in 1927, while living in New Mexico, Bob Wills realized that the local Chicanos weren't dancing to his traditional fiddle breakdowns because the timing and rhythm was different. Then he heard a traditional Mexican tune from a local Mexican fiddler whose name is unknown. Bob later said, quote, "He played the Spanish two-step, and I locked the door where he couldn't get out and nobody else could get in, and I made him stay there until he taught me that." Soon after, he wrote a Mexican-flavored instrumental fiddle tune called Spanish Two-Step and recorded it in 1935 at the very first Texas Playboys recording session. Bob was asked by the record label to come up with something similar, so he rearranged Spanish Two-Step by reversing the bridge section to create a new song, first recorded in 1938 under the title San Antonio Rose. By the spring of 1940, the song was so popular that the publishing company, owned by legendary Tin Pan Alley composer and lyricist Irving Berlin, offered Wills a $300 advance to add lyrics to the song, over $6,500 in today's money. Bob didn't like the words that he came up with, so he gave the Playboys trumpet player and announcer, Everett Stover, $5 and a jug of whiskey to come up with something better. The publishers at Berlin didn't like the lyrics because they weren't mainstream enough, so they rewrote lyrics and published a recording without the group that sold very poorly. Bob and the Playboys recorded their version as New San Antonio Rose, which became his signature song, and then Bing Crosby made it a million-selling pop hit in 1941, forever cemented as a standard in American music. After that, Bob said, quote, "I went from hamburgers to steaks."
Stars all alone. It was there I found, beside the Alamo, enchantment strange as the blue up above, a moonlit path that only she would know. Still here's my broken song of love.
11 years after the first recording of Spanish Two-Step in 1935, Bob decided to do the same thing that had made the New San Antonio Rose so successful, and with Tommy Duncan, added lyrics. They recorded it in 1946 on Columbia as New Spanish Two-Step, which became one of the Playboys' greatest hits, staying on the charts for 23 weeks and reaching number 1.
Down below the Rio Grande, a senorita held my hand and sweetly sang an old melody. Without a worry or a care, a rose she gave me from her hair. Then she whispered, "Si, senor, si, si."
Between 1940 and 1947, Bob Wills was featured in nearly 20 movies, mostly Western B films, organized by his manager, O.W. Mayo. The first film that featured Bob and a few band members was with Tex Ritter, called Take Me Back to Oklahoma, a Western drama about a fight for control over a stage line, which is an old term used for a wagon and stagecoach trail that connected Western outposts in the 19th century, and is today considered one of Tex Ritter's best films.
That's it. Take off on that and see if we can still follow you.
Good enough. Stop. There is a story I heard in Missouri, a gal who had made quite a name.
Appearances in these films had a profound impact on the image and the sound of the Texas Playboys. Prior to this, though some members would often wear Stetson hats, including Bob, they would be dressed in unison with coats and ties like other dance bands of the era. But as these Western films began to become popular, audiences wanted to see them in cowboy garb, as in the movies, so they changed their look. And this would forever associate them with country and Western music. And though Bob thought of himself as a leader of a jazz band, this also marked the departure from the jazz and blues influence of their early recordings, and Bob dressed in full cowboy attire for the rest of his career.
Unconfirmed by Allied sources, of course, says that heavy fighting is taking place between the Germans and invasion forces on the Normandy Peninsula, about 31 miles southwest of Le Havre.
In 1942, nearly 3 years into World War II, Bob and a few other members of the Texas Playboys joined the service. Before leaving, he turned over all Tulsa performances to his brother, Johnny Lee Wills, who had been playing banjo in the Playboys since 1934, though he was also an accomplished fiddler, giving him the chance to showcase his prowess with that instrument. Bob was 37 years old when he entered the Army, and he was not physically fit to stay in the military for very long, and received a medical discharge in the summer of 1943.
Well, you know, folks, tomorrow is Christmas, and Bob and the Texas Playboys have a swell Christmas present for you. It's a big Christmas night party and dance out at the barn near Fresno starting at 8:30. You can bring your entire family out there and have a good time, and the price is only $1 plus tax. That's tomorrow night, Christmas night at the barn near Fresno for Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys.
After the war, with a growing taste for the big screen, Bob decided to relocate to Southern California. It was the end of the big band era, so he reformatted the Playboys to be a 5 to 6 piece group with little to no horns and highlighting electric stringed instruments. He appeared in many more films and was more financially successful than at any other time in his career. Stores could not keep his records on the shelves, and Bob was one of the highest paid band leaders in America. The Playboys toured relentlessly, breaking attendance records at dance halls across the country. 1 year after the war, Bob was only home for 17 nights.
I'm drifting into deep water. I'm starting to care for you. You're getting me in deep water. Be careful what you do.
In 1946, Bob moved the operation to Sacramento, California, and aimed to stop touring so much and settle down. He restored an old building and turned it into a dance hall that he called Will's Point in 1948. It featured an Olympic-sized swimming pool called Will's Plunge, and it was designed and marketed to be fun for the whole family. No funny business allowed, just dancing and fun. There were couches for kids to sleep on, hot dogs, coffee, and beer available. The Texas Playboys were the house band, and they slept in rooms that were built under the stage, and the club held nearly 4,000 people, with daily radio broadcasts.
So give a hand to Bob Wills and his Texas Playboy. Let her go, Bob. Boys, that Lone Star rag.
Within a year, however, the dance hall became a financial burden, and Bob's drinking, which had been an issue before, grew worse, and he started missing shows again. Tommy Duncan had been covering for him time and time again over their 15-year relationship, and it got to the point where it was too much. When Bob overheard Tommy complaining about it, he fired him.
As I look at the letters that you wrote to me, it's you that I am thinking of. As I read the lines that to me were so sweet, I remember our faded love.
Bob decided to get on the road again and relocated back to Oklahoma City in 1949, both out of a desire to continue performing and to keep Will's Point afloat. In 1950, he had 2 top 10 hits, Ida Red Likes to Boogie and Faded Love, which would become an even bigger hit and forever associated with the legendary country singer Patsy Cline after she recorded the song in 1963, peaking at number 7 on the country chart with what would be her final top 10 solo single before tragically passing away. Around 1950, radio stations started to specialize in certain genres of popular music. Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys were usually lumped in with country and western, though the music didn't actually fit on those stations, which were playing the Nashville sound, replacing the more rough honky-tonk music with elaborate strings, sophisticated background vocals, and smooth tempos, generally found in pop music. And the Playboys didn't fit the sound on pop stations either, even though they played popular music. The versatility of the group began to limit their commercial success, so they were forced to tour dance halls again to make a living.
Partners on the floor, boys out the door, let's dance. Circle legs, spread out wide, grab your partner, go hog wild, swing. Up, boy.
On the heels of a few hits, Bob opened up a second club called the Bob Wills Ranch House in Dallas, Texas, in 1950. Within a few years, however, the club left him in desperate financial straits, with heavy debts to the IRS for back taxes due to poor management. Bob had to sell many of his assets, including the rights to New San Antonio Rose, and it wrecked him financially. The venue, however, has been going ever since, as the Longhorn Ballroom, widely considered as the most historic music venue in Texas.
Well, howdy, everybody, even way down yonder. Come on up here and get closer to us. It'll be warmer. Doggone, we're looking forward to a grand time here tonight, but you people are going to have to get out here and dance in order to work us harder where we'll keep warm.
The Playboys could draw 1,000 people on a Monday night in the early 1950s. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, the dance hall audience nearly dwindled entirely. The emerging rock and roll sound captured everyone's attention, with Elvis and the Beatles changing the trajectory of Western swing, essentially overnight. Bob was tired anyhow, and he started focusing on family and friends. When he was home, he was home. Nobody in the band was allowed to visit. When he was on the road, trying to scrounge a living in the few dance halls left, he called home every single day.
As the life is, a musician on the road all the time, away from home, all the hard work, and I imagine a lot of time there's a lot of heartbreak and disappointment. Let me ask you, what drives a person to keep on and keep going?
The folks, people, the people. You can go out so low, you can feel so low that you don't feel like you can even pick up a fiddle and a bow. And you walk out there, and those people are out there sitting in front of you smiling and are all there to have a good time. I don't know, just does something to you.
In the late 1950s, the Playboys band expanded and added a horn section and a new vocalist named Leon Rausch. They first went back to Tulsa, and then they got enough bookings in Las Vegas to move there in 1959. From 1960 to 1962, Bob reunited with vocalist Tommy Duncan, whom he said many times was his favorite singer that he ever worked with. Notably, they released a record under the name Bob Wills and Tommy Duncan and the Texas Playboys for the album Together Again.
The kind of love I can't forget, dear.
What kind of love was that, Thomas?
Was the love you gave to me.
Oh, go on. That sounds wonderful. Let's hear some more.
I had my chance, but now I suffer.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. No.
My heart is filled with misery.
In 1962, Bob had a heart attack, signaling the first of many health issues that would ail him for the remaining days. He disbanded the Texas Playboys after 30 years and began occasionally performing solo with a backing band. Even though Western swing wasn't popular anymore, he was regarded as a living legend among the country and Western community. Bob believed that he and his music were Western, not country, so it was something of a surprise and a pleasure when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1968.
Friends, I don't believe this. No wonder Mr. Johnson's been insisting for 8 months I come with him down here. Not that I didn't want to, I just wasn't able. Finally, he says, if you'll go with me, I'll pay you way. So he's paid my way, and I'm here. Thanks to you. Words can't express how I feel.
We finally got his head off.
Also in 1968, the Texas State Legislature honored Bob Wills for his contributions to American music. By the next year, worn out from years on the road, Bob had a crippling stroke. It looked like he might have taken his final bow, but instead, by 1971, he recovered enough to travel occasionally and appear at tribute concerts. He had one landmark event and recording left, a 2-disc reunion of Bob Wills and his longtime loyal sidemen, called For the Last Time.
Too close to the mic, really? Okay, Smokey, we're rolling.
These recordings also included a superfan, Merle Haggard. Growing up in Bakersfield, California, Merle had ridden his bike to go and see the Playboys live, but he ended up listening through an open window because he couldn't afford a ticket.
But a lot of my influence came from the Midwestern type country Western music. Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys, that type of music was very big in California when I was a child.
It was a grand reunion for the Texas Playboys, with members from the 1930s to the 1960s, and for some, it had been 30 years since they performed with Bob. Now in a wheelchair, he sat among them, his delighted ahas punctuating solo after solo. Exhausted after directing 6 recordings, Bob Wills took his leave with the promise to return for the next day's session. But he didn't make it back. His health declined quickly that night, and within a few days had another stroke when he was in the hospital. Despairing that they were losing their beloved boss man, the band finished the recording the next day, some with tears in their eyes. That Dallas 1973 recording session was indeed the last time that the band would be with Bob Wills, 38 years after their first session in the same city. He soon suffered another stroke, leaving him partially paralyzed, unable to communicate, and comatose for the last 2 months of his life. Bob Wills passed away in a Fort Worth nursing home on May 13, 1975. His grave lies in Tulsa, with a plaque that says, "Deep within my heart lies a melody."
Deep within my heart lies a melody, a song song of old San Antone, where in dreams I live with the memory beneath the stars all alone.
Today, Bob Wills is still the king of Western swing, and his birth and upbringing could hardly be less regal. He was born and raised on a family farm in West Texas. There was no reason to believe that anyone from there would create a new genre of music that fused country and jazz melodies and rhythms with urban and rural sensibilities. From the Great Depression through the 1940s, Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys were the most popular dance band in the Southwest. Their amalgamation of ragtime, traditional fiddle tunes, New Orleans jazz, blues, mariachi, and big band sound was the foundation of Western swing.
The sound we call Western swing is the legacy of one man, the late Bob Wills. And tonight, Bob's former Texas Playboys have come from Tulsa, Houston, Sacramento, Chicago, Fresno, and Los Angeles, joined together with Merle Haggard from Bakersfield to preserve the legend of the king of Western swing, Bob Wills.
The Texas Playboys are on the air.
Bob was married 6 times and divorced 5 times, from 1935 to 1942. He was twice married to and twice divorced from Mary Helen Brown, the widow of Bob's ex-band member and the father of Western swing, Milton Brown. He finally found happiness when he married Betty Anderson in 1942, whom he would spend the rest of his life with, have 3 children, and over 20 years moved the family 14 times.
Please don't leave me anymore, darling. Partings are so sad, my dear. Yes. For you're the only one that I love, darling. Can't you tell that I'm sincere?
Bob Wills took great care of the musicians in the Texas Playboys. In Tulsa, they were paid far more than any musicians in big bands of that size. And during the Dust Bowl decade, and at the tail end of the Great Depression, Bob constantly gave them raises without them asking. Over 200 musicians graced the Texas Playboys lineup, and the list of legendary players reads like a who's who listing of Western swing's top musicians, including fiddlers Johnny Gimble and Keith Coleman, one of the greatest first-generation steel players Leon McAuliffe, country music's first drummer Smokey Dacus, pianist Al Strickland, and guitarist Eldon Shamblin, who became widely recognized as one of the masters of his instrument.
I grew up on music that we call Western swing. It don't matter who's in Austin, Bob Wills is still the king.
Bob Wills had a profound influence on country music that still has ripple effects today. Musicians who cite him as a heavy inspiration include Buck Owens, Merle Haggard and his backing band The Strangers, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, George Strait, Eric Clapton, the Rolling Stones, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, and countless others. By making Bakersfield, California a regular stop in his prime years, Bob helped create a subgenre of country music known as the Bakersfield Sound, with elements of rock and roll, honky-tonk style country, electric instrumentation, and backbeats. Quote, "It don't matter who's in Austin, Bob Wills is still the king," Waylon Jennings sang, 70 years after Bob Wills' birth.
I'll be glad when you're dead, you ransom you. Oh, you ransom you. I'll be tickled to death when you leave this earth, you know. Oh, you know. If you want to know just what we got good rhythm and swing it high. Oh, you know. Oh, you know. You dirty rascal, you. You dirty rascal, you.
The Bob Wills birthday celebration is held every year in March with a Western swing concert and dance at the Cain's Ballroom in Tulsa. Every April since 1972, thousands of people from all over the world gather in Turkey, Texas to celebrate Bob Wills Day. The Greenville Chamber of Commerce hosts an annual Bob Wills Fiddle Festival and Contest every November in downtown Greenville, Texas. Bob Wills has been inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame, the the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he and the Texas Playboys were given the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award.
Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 6.
And that's all for episode 5 of season 3. Huge thanks to author Brent Davis for volunteering your time on this piece of music history. To support this program, join the Patreon community or send a one-time donation at the links in the show notes. Find American Songcatcher on Instagram at American Songcatcher, and if you're using Apple Podcasts, please make a rating and review. A massive thanks to our community on Patreon for the continued support of this independent program. Our intro song is Payday by Mississippi John Hurt from the Today album. Our outro song is 16 Tons, performed by Tennessee Ernie Ford, originally written by Merle Travis. This episode was produced, edited, recorded, and distributed by myself, Nicholas Edward Williams, with writing and research by Brent Davis. In the words of Bob Wills, here's to the songs of old. May they live on forever. See you next time on American Songcatcher.
Can't no high-tone woman make me walk the line. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.